And our next guest is quite exciting, Sean Hargreaves. He is an illustrator and designer. You guys should look him up on IMDb. He's worked on Bourne Ultimatum, Jurassic Park 2, many, many others. But most importantly, he has brought this beautiful book called Places that is filled with incredible imagery. Again, made in Lightwave. And we're going to bring up Rob and Sean and let them get to it. But he is also going to be signing a limited edition for one of those of you out here that wins it. He's actually going to autograph that directly to you. And we have several other books that we will be giving away as well. So you guys stay tuned. Rob, take it away.
Great. Thank you, Kiki. So, this is a real treat, too. Come up, Sean. Sean Hargreaves has, really had a great career in the industry as an illustrator, designer, and one of the most recent projects that he's done is he, wanted to do a book, this book Places that we were just looking at, and has done this incredible book that, you use Lightwave for all the illustrations in this book, correct?
That's right, yeah.
So in your career, let's pull up the images from the book now and run those for everybody while we speak so that we can look at the images from the book. From Places. Very cool. So, can you walk us through kind of like your inspiration or what what the concept for the book? What was your motivation for doing this book?
Well, what I started to do as a concept artist is I got tired of drawing the same thing 3 times for directors, 3 different views, and I thought, well, I got to get into another way of doing it, and looking into 3D. When I worked at ILM, I thought, well, that's another way of designing. So I thought, well, I'm going to try and just design without any sketches and just design using just sitting down like a blank sheet of paper, in this case Lightwave, and just building models, designing in 3D without any sketches beforehand. And I started doing more and more, and then a publisher saw it, and we decided to make a book of it, and it's worked out really well. It's really a great workflow for me as a designer to show to directors.
Yeah, I bet it really expands, kind of your bag of tricks when you go in on a job.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems to me that, like you said, if you, from a design perspective, and I had to sit, in on a lot of things like Seth Engstrom when I worked on with him in Avatar, and Neville Page that we both know. Sometimes when you're doing illustration or design on a film like that and you're using traditional work, even in Photoshop, when you have to get a different angle, the director wants to see something, you got to go in there and figure all that perspective and all that stuff out, which can be a challenge. And what you get when you actually are, using a 3D tool like Lightwave to do that is it comes along for free, and then you can focus on kind of the composition and the lighting and all of those kinds of creative things and not necessarily have to do what a computer can do very well for you, which is look at a thing from a different perspective.
You want something that's quick, and I tried to stay out of plugins. I just wanted something out of the box that really gave me what I wanted, and Lightwave did that for me, and I learned very quick. And because as an illustrator, you're thinking in 3D, so to go from illustration into 3D, it wasn't that difficult for me.
Yeah.
And I know some other software programs are much more complex, and Lightwave, it was very easy to pick up.
Yeah, I think that it can't be understated how the render engine being integrated, that you're working when you're designing these concepts. Lighting and rendering is like so important in design and form, and when you're working in the same application, when you start modeling, that is going to render basically what I mean is, when you model something, the shaders and surfaces that you apply in Lightwave are what you're going to be rendering when you render in the final thing. So, and there's also an efficient workflow where, kind of like a studio works, you have like a model shop that builds the models, and then it would send it to the stage to shoot, and then you'd have your actors come in, you'd shoot your scene. That's exactly the way Lightwave was designed. It's exactly the setup for Lightwave. Real-world camera equivalents, you have your stage that you shoot on, you're on your backlot, and you have your model shop where you create all the assets for that stage. It really, for me as an artist, as a film student, it translated to me early on as exactly what we were doing at USC, and I was able to make that jump, And I think that really resonates, because if you can see all of that lighting while you're modeling and designing stuff. And have you put the VPR to good use in recently in your work?
Not recently. I mean, I haven't used Lightwave 11, for example, too much. But you know,
so this work was done in a prior version.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay.
But I've used. I mean, I've used. I'm doing another book now, which I'm using 11 for. So you know, that'll be a discussion down the line. But
yeah.
It's certainly, you know, with the lighting, it's very important to show directors of photography the choices, you know, that they're going to have when you actually build the set. So that, you know, it's very, all that's very important, and it's very quick. The key is in a production realm, you have to be very, very quick. You have to think on your feet, and I found this to really work out for me.
So when you started using Lightwave for this book, had you had prior experience in 3D before?
No.
So this was kind of like a leap from the traditional that you had been doing into this 3D realm.
Yeah, I was at Industrial Light and Magic, and I designed a tower. And I'd spent 3 weeks on this design, and I showed it to a production company, and they thought it was too futuristic. And our deadline was Monday, and this was a Friday. And I thought, well, how the heck am I going to redesign this if they've spent 3 weeks on it? So I went back, and I sat with a 3D modeler, and he basically built a bunch of iterations in about a day. And on Monday morning, one was chosen immediately, and that got my brain thinking. You know, why am I sitting there doing 1,000 drawings when I can do a few models and rotate it around? And the whole presentation is different.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
People can understand it immediately. So it was a real eye-opener for me, and that was about 12 years ago. And I've slowly got more and more into it until about 6 years ago, where I fully immersed myself into 3D.
Yeah. You know, it's kind of like, you know, once you've already done something after the fact, it seems like logical. Yeah. But to me, it's so interesting to think, you know, when you're working in a medium that is inherently 3D, meaning not 3D stereoscopic, but just when you shoot a film, the actors are there, there's depth there, lighting hits surfaces and interacts in the way that we see it here. But when you're trying to use a 2D art form to represent that, it's very different from when you actually have in front of you a representation of that 3D space, and light works automatically, because so many things come along for the ride that you have to meticulously work so hard to create when it's all in 2D, that with 3D, it seems like it would open up the process and allow you to be more, you know, have more options easily as far as what you invest in a tower. When you build the tower, you then can see it from 1,000 different angles after you complete that. Yeah.
I mean, I can show some examples of a Lexus commercial I worked on. Victor, if you want to pull up the Lexus stuff.
Great. Let's take a look at the Lexus commercial.
So these are some. All these images, I pretty much did these a little over a day, about a day and a half, doing a bunch of modeling and different choices, different lighting aspects. It was a Lexus on a treadmill. So keep flicking through these, Victor. So you can see the different variations. These are rough models. They're not fully, you know, beautified, but they get the idea across.
And it's all about lighting and form and shape anyway.
Lighting and angle. So this is the last, just hold on this one a minute, Victor. This is the final design that we ended up with. And this is what I showed to the director, and they liked it. And then I went for the final render. Just go to the next one, Victor. So there you see. So, I mean, there's no, when you show that to a director, I mean, he can't get out of it. He knows. You know, a lot of times in the past when we used to draw the sketches, they say, oh, it's a sketch. I didn't really understand it when I saw it, even though it was a really good sketch. But there it is. I mean, that's almost photorealistic.
What is this that we're seeing from?
Well, these are just, I like doing abstract shapes, and it's a good practice. You know, as an artist, if you're a painter, a lot of painters have these abstract paintings, even though they're figure painters, just as practice. And so I did a bunch of this kind of stuff on the side and put it in the book. But it's not for a job, it's just shapes, practicing surfaces and shapes and pushing the program, you know?
Yeah. It's very beautiful. I love, you know, the simplicity, but the understanding of lighting and how it falls across the surfaces. And I think that's the cool thing about Lightwave is that you have, you're working within the renderer when you're doing all this, that it's not, in some applications you're preparing your assets and then you have to go figure out a process or export to some other renderer. In Lightwave, when you're doing this and you load it into the layout stage, you are working in the renderer you're going to render in. So all those things that you've applied to the surfaces, the textures, the UV maps, the shaders, materials, those are exactly what you're going to be rendering with in the application. There's no translation needed. So, it's really cool at your fingertips as a single Illustrator artist to be able to have this kind of a toolkit and create that kind of work. I think your book is beautiful, by the way. Thank you for the copy that you sent to me. I love that, and it inspired me because I just love, I think your work is really beautiful.
If there's anything I can say, and this is to all 3D guys, is that, I'm not an animator, I deal with still images, is really look at photography. I mean, a lot of my work, in fact all of my work has depth of field, and I think a lot of, just that simple thing changes the reality of the image from a lot of other images. If you add depth of field, focusing, shallow depth of field, look at photography, look at Ridley Scott's films, and you'll be really representing what you're going to see, and it really punches up the value of the work, I think.
Absolutely. I mean, we've just recently in Lightwave 11.5 added depth of field iteratively into the VPR renderer, so that whole ray trace render engine that Lightwave has now has depth of field activated. So that and motion blur, which I think, if you're an animator, seeing your shot with motion blur, and especially the way you set things as 24 frame or 30 frame, it really affects the experience when you see a certain kind of blur. You can even exaggerate, maybe with, I'm just thinking of, I've seen some things where the robot has like a light element, and if you exaggerate the motion blur, you can get these streaks of things that pull it, and it allows you to sculpt with light like people would do with like a sparkler, kind of thing. Sure. Those things are now possible iteratively, interactively, with a full ray tracing engine of Lightwave in the VPR, because we've added motion blur and we've added the depth of field. And I agree with you, like, depth of field really can be used to really make an image look amazing, even if it's a very simple form or shape with nothing but lighting and depth of field.
I mean, I think a lot of people get nervous about depth of field. They see the f-stop and they're like, oh God, what's that? But you just have to mess around with it for a bit.
Right.
I mean, I learned it by doing boxes. I put 5 boxes in a row with a camera, and they have to stop at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I learned depth of field like that. And that simple exercise really taught me everything I needed to know about using depth of field in Lightwave.
And you got the concept from that, right?
Absolutely. I mean, I have it in every single image, and
cool.
You might not even see it, but if I turned it off, you would know. It's strange.
It brings it one step closer to photoreal, to a real camera, like you had gone to that location and just shot it with a camera. Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much. We appreciate you sharing, your process and everything with us. And Sean Hargreaves, everybody, please check out Places. You can purchase it on Amazon, yes, as well. Look at his website, which is Sean.
It's SeanHargreavesDesigns.blogspot.com.
Great. And if anybody's watching the post that I made in our forums, I included that link this morning, so you can check out more of Sean's work. Thank you guys so much.